As some of you might know, I buy several of my books based on requests and recommendations from my fans. Sometimes I buy things on a whim, like I did when I kept seeing ads for Fierce Kingdom. It was a thriller depicting a mother and her son wandering around a zoo at dusk, trying to avoid some undescribed horror that kept them trapped inside. Well, I love thrillers, and the plot sounded like it had a good maternal point of view that I think could do a lot of good to explore, so I bought a copy. And it may be that I maintain a high standard for thrillers, but this one left me wanting. The book is rather new, having come out just this July. It was written by Jen Phillips, who apparently won the 2009 Barnes & Noble Discover Award for fiction. Reading this book alone makes me think she has a lot of talent as a writer. Her maternal character Joan came off as surprisingly complex in the short amount of time we get to see her. And Lincoln, her son, is portrayed as a very realistic 4-year-old, thinking more about dinner and his toys than the obvious danger his mother is protecting him from. However, one of the book's problems is in how that danger is introduced. The summary on the inside cover says, "What Joan sees as she hustles her son towards the exit gate minutes before closing time sends her sprinting back into the zoo, her child in her arms. And for the next 3 hours, the entire scope of the novel, she keeps running." From this, you might think that a monster appeared, or maybe the animals got loose and were out for human blood. Turns out it's just a pair of gunmen. Still a serious situation, but the nondescript description leaves a lot of room for interpretation, and since most of the thrillers I read have some supernatural or sci-fi twist to them, this reveal left me a little disappointed. Still, I can't fault the author too much on that point, unlike when the pacing grinds to a halt early on. Once Joan realizes what's going on, she grabs Lincoln and runs for an empty exhibit, trying her best to protect the two of them, but just as importantly tries her best to keep Lincoln from getting traumatized by this event. And for a while, it's very engaging, watching a mother do her utmost to protect her son both physically and emotionally. However, after several chapters straight, this effect does wear off. Joan's constant contemplating becomes a drag to get through, and while her maternal drive is her strongest part of her character, the book kinda gives us an excessive amount of it. There's only so much introspection one can do before the reader finds it extraneous. The book is also written in real time, counting down the minutes through the 3-hour attack, but with very little action actually shown. This is like watching the minutes go by as you wait for the school bell. Contrast this with the same minute-by-minute account from Hill 488, which actually went into far more detail of what was actually happening around the heroes. The difference was, that was all action, so it was easy to get absorbed. Joan spends her time exploring the little things she has to do to keep Lincoln quiet and calm, and there's only so much you can actually do to keep that interesting. Like I said before, one of the stronger elements of the book is Joan's bond with Lincoln. She knows what he likes, what he wants, and can lead him to safety, even though he's incapable of fully grasping the situation. Lincoln just treats the whole event as an odd day out. He doesn't know why they can't go home or have dinner. He doesn't understand why they have to stay hidden and why he can't go to the bathroom. He even questions if he's really allowed to have a snack from a vending machine so close to dinner time. He's portrayed realistically, finding little ways to entertain himself, like claiming the spigot on the wall is actually a sleeping alien. It's the little things like that which make him stand out. Joan is also a well-written character. Her ability to keep herself calm and think critically in a terrifying situation is admirable. One great example of that is about halfway through the book, so minor spoilers ahead. Skip to this time if you want to avoid it. While hiding in an empty enclosure, Joan overhears another mother running for safety with a crying infant in her arms. Later, after leaving the enclosure, because Lincoln was getting antsy, Joan overhears the baby crying in a trash can. The other mother literally threw her baby away. The only saving grace of the moment is that the trash can was right next to a speaker, which drowned out the baby's shrieks. Joan sees the baby by chance and wonders to herself if she should rescue it, then decides against it and closes the lid on the trash can. At first, this really annoyed me. How can you leave a helpless baby like that? You know it needs help, so why aren't you stepping in to do the right thing? Of course, I was angry at the first mother for leaving the kid behind, but isn't Joan doing the same thing? Perhaps I can blame my own bravado for thinking like that, but the more I thought about Joan's decision, the more it made sense to me. The baby hadn't stopped crying every time we'd seen it before, and there was no reason to think it would stop soon. Joan left the baby in a degree of relative safety, as safe as anyone can be in an active shooter scenario, in order to protect her son first and foremost. This is the sort of depth of writing that Phillips is capable of, and while I did find some of the scenes dragging, her talent does shine in several telltale moments. There are also other characters that get their own chapters in the book, including one of the shooters, but none of them are really worth writing home about. One is a teenager getting off work in the zoo when the shooting started, and the other is a retired teacher who's too old for this sort of thing. Since the book is almost entirely told from Joan's point of view, we get very little insight to who these two characters really are. Unfortunately, not only do they not have the same depth as Joan, they barely have any depth at all. A lot of that is because Joan is telling the story and Joan doesn't really like either of them, but within the context of the story, they each serve only a single function, and that's it. I'd go into detail, but I'm trying to avoid giving too many spoilers here. Overall, Fierce Kingdom was kind of meh. Some people might like it, but I'm not one of them. While I did really like Joan's inner thoughts at first, the overabundance of her mind racing did get old after a while. The book would have massively benefited from trimming some of the fat, and maybe adding a bit more risk. Danger is rarely presented, so there isn't much tension to be felt. Then again, that could just be the difference between maternal and paternal instincts, so if you thought differently, let me know. So, have you read the book? What did you think? If not, do you want to read it now? Whatever your thoughts, comment below and stay tuned for more.